Okay guys, so as I'm getting this in presentation mode, this is going to be just a very short explanation on what ping pong diplomacy is. So if you chose this as part of your choice board, here's your little short explanation. So ping pong diplomacy essentially is opening relations between the United States and China. So looking at background to the event, which is known as ping pong diplomacy, something you should know is that China, and you already should know this, is that China has been communist since 1949. Okay, when Mao Zedong, this guy here, took over China and installed a communist government, and they were known as the People's Republic of China. The United States, since 1949, has not recognized that government and does not associate, talk to, hasn't been over to, hasn't been invited to China. In the meantime, who have we been associating as the government of China? That is the democratic government. It's called the Republic of China, set up in Taiwan, and that is the government that we are associating with. We do not associate or talk to, communicate, negotiate, anything like that with the People's Republic, the communist government. So we do not recognize them. No one has been over there since 1949, or we haven't been invited to come over there since 1949. So the ping heard around the world. So in 1971, the United States ping pong team was actually in Tokyo competing at the World Table Tennis Championship. And while they are in Tokyo, China actually extends an invitation to the ping pong team to come over and visit China. And they would meet with the Chinese ping pong team, stuff like that, which is huge. Okay, no group of Americans have been invited to China since 1949. So none of our diplomats, anything like that, have been over to China. And China's now trying to open themselves up to the United States. And big question is, like, why would China invite us in the first place? Like, things have been very tense between the two countries. Why would they invite a group of Americans over? Basically, they're kind of wanting to open the door between us and the we're the United States, between the United States and China. And they're maybe looking at a potential alliance shift. You know, they've always kind of been sided with Russia. And they may be looking to shift that or open to shifting that. So they wanted to open the door. So pictured here is your U.S. ping pong team. As they arrive in China, they took a picture in front of a Chinese monument location. Why would President Nixon allow this? Like, why would he say yes? The United States has been very determined these past 20 years that we will not recognize the People's Republic of China. We don't associate with them. And so the biggest answer is détente. And the détente is a foreign policy in which Richard Nixon is now starting to shift our foreign policy to something different. And what détente means is easing hostilities or tensions between nations. Hey, like, basically it's like, fact of the matter is, Communist China is going to exist, and at some point the United States is going to have to acknowledge that, yes, they exist, and we're going to have to start communicating with them. So just being realistic of the situation and trying to calm tensions between nations. So our first example of this is with China. We will eventually get to easing relations between us and the Soviets, and that happens throughout the 70s. But for this situation, we are easing tensions with China, and that is known as détente. Down here, I just have kind of shown you what we've been through. We've been practicing containment, which kind of goes along with the domino theory. We're containing communism, like it should not exist. We can't let it spread. Then we practice brinkmanship, like upping our arms, you know, on the brink of war at any time. Like tensions are high. We're still practicing containment, as you saw through the Vietnam War. And now we're transferring over towards détente, which let's ease those tensions, try to get along with each other, be realistic. China's going to exist and they're going to be communist, and we might as well recognize that. So here you can see some different pictures of the U.S. ping pong team as they visit China. Just some cool images here. This Time magazine, you can see the team visited the Great Wall. They exchanged different items, things like that from their countries, and they even played some ping pong as well too over in China. If you've ever seen Forrest Gump goes and plays ping pong over in China. That's a reference to ping pong diplomacy. 7 months later, in that time period, Nixon had secretly arranged a meeting to go to China, and this is going to be the first presidential visit to China since 1949, which is huge. So this happens in February of 1972. He meets with the Chinese premier, that's Zhou Enlai actually, and that is him right here. Sorry, that should be a Z instead of a C. But that is the leader right there. That's not the official leader, like the head of China is here, Mao Zedong, and you can see Richard Nixon meeting with Mao Zedong there. What did they talk about? What did they agree to? They agreed that they should expand cultural contacts with one another, kind of open themselves up to each other more, and look at trading more with one another. And so overall, looking at this, like the two reflections from each of the leaders, Zhou Enlai says, never before in history has a sport been used so effectively as a tool of international diplomacy. So ping pong kind of opened up the door, which allowed politics to further open that door in communication between the people. And Richard Nixon says it's known as the week that changed the world. And so because of this U.S. ping pong team going over in 1971, this opened relations between us and China, which had been closed for the last 20-something years. So, pretty huge. All right, that's ping pong diplomacy.